Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best legendary weapons in Baldur's Gate 3 on this tier list. So, some of the legendary weapons here are the best weapons in the game, whereas some of the other legendary weapons aren't even as good as some uncommon weapons. So, I'll be breaking this down for y'all and giving my thoughts on these. So, first things first is we got the Devotee's Mace. This is actually the easiest of the legendary weapons to get because we just need a level 10 cleric, and they just have to use their Arm Thy Servant skill, and then they get this for free. However, this is one of the weaker ones. This can only be equipped on the main hand, but what it does, it deals 5 to 17 damage, which is a 1d6 plus 3 of bludgeoning damage, and then a 1d8 of radiant damage. So that's pretty decent damage-wise, but it doesn't really have any real big benefits. It gives you the Healing Incense aura, which gives yourself a team heal. At the start of each turn, gets 1d4 of healing, so every time that your teammate starts their turn, they get that little boost to their healing. It can be decently useful, but I feel like there's another one that we can get as a cleric that's just a whole lot better. So this one just gets outclassed pretty early on in the game, actually Act 1 versus getting to Act 3 to become level 10. So I'm going to put the Devotee's Mace in the C tier. There's just straight up better weapons, and for the cost of, I guess, equipping this, you're better off probably using the Blood of Lathander or something else. So next, we got ourselves Balduran's Giant Slayer. This is possibly the best two-handed weapon in the game, unless you're a Githyanki and you can benefit from the Sword of the Astral Plane. But Balduran's Giant Slayer, what it does, so on hit, double the damage from your Strength modifier. And this weapon will give you advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, and gargantuan enemies. So, doubling our Strength modifier is incredibly useful. In Act 3, there is a surplus of Strength potions that can give you the plus 8, so plus 16 damage. Really good. Also, what's interesting is if you're a warlock, you can Pact to the Blade this and get your charisma added to the damage attack rolls as well. So, all around, a very powerful weapon, and it also gives you the giant form, so you can give yourself a big buff. I like giving this to Karlach and getting her to become a huge tiefling. I think that's pretty cool, but even so, it gives you advantage on attack rolls against large enemies, which there's quite a few of them in Act 3, so it actually gets a lot of use in this act. It also has some pretty good attacks, like the weapon attack on this is quite powerful. Balduran's Giant Slayer is easy S tier. This weapon is incredibly powerful, and it looks pretty cool too. It's got like a heart beating in it. I think this is one of the best weapons in the game, and definitely a good one if you got someone that's focusing on strength, or even like someone that's focused on strength potions, because this can be extremely powerful. And yeah, normally it deals 2d6 plus 3 of slashing damage, but you're going to get this all buffed up with your strength. So yeah, very powerful. Next, we have the Duelist Prerogative. This is an interesting one because its benefits are if you have it in the main hand and then you have nothing in your other hand. So no shield, no dual wielding, just straight up holding this one weapon. So for that, it already loses a couple points, but what it does, when your offhand is empty, you can score a critical hit at 19. That's okay, but some of these other ones will give that as well. And you get an extra reaction. That's where this is kind of nice, because having 2 reactions is great for someone with like a Sentinel perk or any type of weaponized. Any way you can weaponize your reaction is always good, so having 2 of them is even better, obviously. So on a hit with a melee weapon, you can use a reaction to deal an additional necrotic damage equal to your spell or proficiency bonus. So a +4 of necrotic damage, that's okay. Not a huge boost. Proficiency bonuses only go up to +4, so not a massive damage buff, but you also get the challenge to duel, so you can challenge enemy to only attack you, similar to the compelled duel, but inflicting bleeding on the target as well. So that's decent. And also the Dueler's Enthusiasm, when you're not dual wielding, you can make an additional melee attack with the Duelist Prerogative. The only issue is this weapon, it's kind of hard to get, 1, but 2, there's actually a very rare weapon called the Belm, which is basically this, but better. And the Belm you can put in your offhand and then get yourself a main hand attack. So I actually think maybe controversial. I know there are some builds that can kind of use this, but I'm actually going to put this in the F tier. Getting extra reactions nice, but the fact that you have to use this with no weapon in your offhand kind of kills it, honestly. You have to have your offhand empty, so you can't throw on a shield. That makes it kind of not amazing, so I'm going to put it in the F tier just because the Belm just does what this does, but better, I would say. The extra reaction's nice. This is the only way you can get an extra reaction, so that's good, but I don't know. Reactions are useful, but even just having 1 is good. Doubling that Typically, you're not going to be using 2 reactions per turn. So yeah, I'm going to put that in the F tier just because it's outclassed by the bell. Next, we got the Crimson Mischief here. And now this is actually a very powerful one. These 2 weapons, you can actually get them relatively easy. You got to go fight Orin in Act 3. They both have unique interactions if you have it in the main hand or in your offhand. So I'll be talking about both of these. So the Crimson Mischief, it deals a 1d6 plus 2 of piercing damage, and it deals an additional 1d4 necrotic. Both these weapons will deal extra necrotic damage. And it also has a conditional. If the target has less than 50% of its health points, it deals an additional 1d4 of piercing damage. So that's really great. In the main hand, when you make an attack with advantage, so you want to be attacking with advantage as much as possible, equip the Risky Ring, and then you get yourself a nice +7 piercing damage on top of this. That also pairs well with, if you have the Ballast armor, you're going to have vulnerability. That gives the enemy vulnerability to piercing damage, so they'll take 17 or 14 damage additionally if you attack with advantage, and then doubles the piercing damage that you get from it. So it can actually work extremely well with certain builds. And if you have it in the offhand, you can add your ability modifier to the damage that it deals. So you basically get the dual wielding fighting style for free. This is a really good weapon, and I would say that once you get both of these, you're going to probably have both of them equipped on either your rogue or a fighter or someone that's going to be using these finesse weapons. So I'm going to put the Crimson Mischief in the S tier. That +7 piercing damage. Damage riders are kind of rare, but very useful. Like the Caustic Ring adding 2 acid damage is awesome. This adds 7 damage if you got advantage, and then it can be doubled. That is just absolutely powerful and something you definitely want to take advantage of. I'll also be posting a build later today where we take advantage of this with a fighter, thief, rogue multi-class. So very useful. Next is the Crimson, or the Blade of the First Blood, which is similar to the Crimson Mischief, but it deals 1d4 plus 2 piercing damage, and then it also has that 1d4 of necrotic damage, which is really nice to have on top of it. But if it gives you the ability to hit a critical hit with, or -1 from the number you need to roll to hit a critical hit. So if you're normally 20, it makes it down to 19. That's really good. And on top of this, in the main hand, if you attack with it, it applies vulnerability to piercing damage. I think that's really good. If you're going with a good aligned character, you're not likely going to get the Ballast armor, which gives that vulnerability to piercing damage within 3 meters. So with this, you can attack once, stab them, and it applies vulnerability to piercing damage. And then the next attack is going to have double the piercing damage because vulnerability will double that. So it only gives it to people that aren't resistant to piercing damage. So just be mindful of that. And if you have this in the offhand, you get a free riposte. So whenever a creature misses you with an attack, if you have this in your offhand, you go, bah, stab them with it. And that's really nice. Also, if this is in the offhand, it gives you a +1 armor class. So really good. It's hard to say which of these is better because they both are very situational depending on a build. +7 piercing damage on advantage is great, but also applying vulnerability to piercing damage is also really great. So depends on the day, depends on the build. They're kind of tied. They could bounce between being better than each other. I like the applying vulnerability to piercing damage, so I'm a little bit of a fan of the Blade of the First Blood a little more, but still very powerful weapons, and you typically want to use them both together. Next, we got the Gontr Mael. Now, what's nice about this is it gives you, so when you attack with it, it's basically a guiding bolt. It'll give advantage on the next attack roll. So that can actually pair well if you have this with like something that needs, if you have someone with a bow, attack with it, gives advantage to the next attack, and then you go in and attack with the Crimson Mischief, that's an extra 7 damage. Pretty good. But I think that the biggest benefit to this is actually it gives you Celestial Haste. This is haste for 5 turns, so not as good as 10 turns, but it doesn't give you the fatigue after it wears off. So this, easily an S tier weapon. Of all the bows, you want to have someone using this at all times because that extra haste is so good. You can apply it on yourself and then you just get a free action again. So typically at the start of combat, you want to be doing that right away, so you get 2 actions on every subsequent turn. That can really turn the tide of battle. That could be 6 attacks on your fighter, which is really nice. On top of that, the object also shines and glows, so that is nice. Glowing within 6 meters. And then also it has the Bolt of Celestial Light. It deals 1d4 radiant damage and frightens targets with intimidating arrows after attacking. Ranged weapon attacks with Gontr Mael will deal an additional 1d4 of radiant damage. So can deal a little bit extra damage. This is in the Steel Watch Foundry, so it's a really good weapon. The Celestial Haste just makes it an easy S tier because You might have spellcasters that can apply haste, but your fighters can't do it to themselves until now. That just makes it alone an easy S tier. Next, we got Seluna's Selune's Spear of the Night. This is an interesting one. We also have the Char's Evening Spear, which I would say is better than this, but this is just the Selune's Spear of the Night. What makes Char's Spear S? I would put Char's Spear in the S tier. I guess it's not on here, but what makes Char's Spear so good is you can cast Darkness every turn, and then you also are immune to blindness, so you can go into the darkness, attack people, blah blah blah. Very useful. Now, Selune's Spear of the Night gives you advantage on Wisdom saving throws and Perception checks. Yay! That's okay, I guess. There is a lot of Wisdom saving throws you need to make, so that is good. But this deals a 1d8 and plus 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage, so kind of a wide range for damage. But it also gives you Moonbeam, a level 3 version of Moonbeam. So that can be nice if you got someone that's using Sanctuary, because you can apply Moonbeam, go into your Sanctuary, be invulnerable, or take no damage, and then move your Moonbeam around and it doesn't break your Sanctuary. This also gives you Dark Vision up to 12 meters, so if you're someone that doesn't have it, there's a lot of ways to get Dark Vision, so that's not a huge benefit on a weapon, but it's okay. Moon Mode also is another action you get, and then we get Rush Attack and Maiming Strike, so it's an alright spear. I just never found this to be one that's very, very useful. The Char Spear of the Evening is a little bit better. I might put this in the B tier because having the advantage on Wisdom saving throws is really good. And the free level 3 Moonbeam's nice, but it could even go C tier. Like, it's nothing super, like, necessary. Next, we got the Blood of Lathander, and this is an interesting one because it's the earliest legendary weapon that we can get. I guess the Sword of the Astral Plane is also another one we can get really early on, but this one is worth its weight in gold. I would want to put it in the S tier, but after you get to Act 3, there's just a lot of other weapons that you probably won't end up using this, but it's easy A tier. The Blood of Lathander, what makes it so good is in Act 2, this is pretty much something you want to have. Not essential, but it just makes your time a whole lot easier in the Shadowlands. So what it does is it sheds holy light within 6 meters, and in combat, fiends and undead standing in the light are blinded. So they have disadvantage on attack rolls, meaning they're going to miss their attacks. Unless they succeed a Constitution saving throw. So this can basically shut down all the undead in Act 2. You do need a bit of light at certain points in Act 2, so very useful there. It does 1d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage. And the biggest benefit would be, once per long rest, if you get your health points reduced to 0, you heal for 2d12 health, and then all allies within 9 meters will also heal for 1d6. So you can apply healing to your entire team if you go down and bring yourself back up. So that's like just a nice benefit of it as well. But everything included, like the blinding on undead, giving your team light, it's just extremely useful in Act 2. So this is one that it could go S tier. It's S tier for Act 2, but well, in general, still I would say A tier, because you can get this really early on to the Mountain Pass. You can go right for this. You can let Astarion get blown up and get some hilarious dialogue if you want to go that route. But yeah, it's a really good weapon, but its usefulness kind of falters into Act 3 when you have much better options for damage. Next, we got the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. This is another weapon that you can get really early on in the game. I actually discovered this early on. I had a Paladin. I knew Kurthrak Voss had a really nice weapon, so I used Command Drop on it, and he dropped the weapon, and I picked it up. So I had my whole first playthrough. I wasn't a Gith, but there's huge benefits for playing as a Gith. I would almost say you should have this as a Gith, because when a Githyanki wields it, it gets an additional 1d6 of psychic damage. And on top of that, the Githyanki will also have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. So getting advantage on wisdom saving throws is huge, but the other 2 saving throws is really good as well, so that's nice. And also gets resistance to psychic damage, which is a decently common damage type that's not easy to resist. So getting that is nice because when you fight mind flayers, you're going to have resistance to the psychic damage that you can get. And you also can't be charmed. So this is the ultimate illithid fighting weapon. And again, you can get this extremely early on. This is also a really good weapon if you're not a Gith, because it gives you the 2d6 plus 3 slashing damage. And it has a plus 3 weapon enchantment, which is really impossible to find early on in the game. I'm going to put it in the A tier. You pretty much want to give this to Lae'zel or be a Githyanki yourself, because the benefits that it gives are so nice. The 1d6 of psychic damage plus all the resistances is just super useful. So easy A tier, because yeah, it's just good. It could go B tier. It's B tier if you're not Githyanki, but being Githyanki gets a nice benefit. So Yeah, A tier. Next we got the Nyrulna. Now, what's nice about Nyrulna is it gets it's 1d8 plus 1d6 plus 3 of piercing damage, but it also does 1d6 of thunder damage. And the biggest benefit of this is throwing it. Not every build is kind of catered around throwing, so I think that's what holds it back from being an S tier option. But I do think it could go S tier, especially if you're on like a Throw Zerker or an Eldritch Knight, because when you throw the weapon, it returns to your hand. So bound weapon for free, you can lose. I actually threw this and lost it. Certain areas it will not give it back, so it is a little misleading. Just want to point that out. You cannot be forced to drop the trident. When thrown, the weapon creates an explosion, dealing 3 to 12 thunder damage in a 6-meter radius. So if there's a lot of enemies around, throw it, boom, hits a huge amount of enemies. And this also stacks with reverberation builds, so if you have anything that builds off of that, this will help it. You also gain a 3 meters movement speed and jump distance, so a lot of classes can actually take advantage of this, and it gives you immunity to fall damage. And it also has a 6-meter radius of light, so this weapon does glow too. So all those benefits, it's definitely an S tier or A tier weapon. It's S tier if you have a throwing build, but since not everyone likes throwing builds, I'm not going to put it up in the S tier because I would probably have someone complain. So I'm going to put it in the A tier just because someone might even complain for me putting in A tier. But yeah, it has to be on like a throwing build for it to get its maximum usefulness. So yeah. Finally, we got Markoheshkir. This is one of my favorites personally. I use it. It basically takes a caster up to S tier because you're not going to attack people with it, but it gives you a +1 to spell save DC, +1 to your spell attack rolls. So you're going to hit your things like Scorching Ray higher, and then also +1 spell save DC means enemies won't succeed their saving throw against this as often. So you'll hit your chain lightnings more frequently. Now, where this gets really good is it has Arcane Battery, giving you a free spell cast. So, if you have a sorcerer, they can use this, or I guess really anyone, and they can get a free Chain Lightning. And that is a massive boost, because Chain Lightning once per long rest is not amazing. Like, you want to obviously use that as much as possible, but this allows you to cast it twice. And then, we also get Kreska's Favor. So what this does is Kreska's Favor, you get to choose a element type. So there's like cold, fire, acid, lightning. The Bolts of Doom, the lightning one, or the Frost of the Dark Winter are my two favorites. The Frost of the Dark Winter will give you Ice Storm as well as Cone of Cold as a free spell that you can cast. And the Bolts of Doom will give you a free Chain Lightning and Thunder or Lightning Bolt. So those are two extremely powerful spells. And you also got your proficiency bonus to the damage of those spells of that damage type and gain resistance to it. So if you go with the Lightning and you got a sorcerer with 24 charisma, they get a nice +7 to the damage, and they also resist lightning damage. So Markoheshkir, I would say, is probably the best. It's the best weapon in the game. Getting a free spell cast plus being able to cast Chain Lightning with extra damage, easy. This is like S+ tier. It should go a tier higher. It's that good. So yeah, Markoheshkir, awesome weapon. It goes with a variety of builds. And you can also get Hunger of Hadar from it, so that's pretty cool too. But yeah, Balduran Giant Slayer, easy S tier weapon. Markoheshkir, easy S tier. Gontr Mael with that haste, super useful. And the two Orin Blades are also very useful. They could drop down to A tier potentially. Blood of Lathander, super useful in Act 2, but let me know in the comments what you think of this tier list, where you would place these weapons, and what you'd like to see next for content. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button below, and I'll see you all in the next video.